Hi, I'm Stacy Miller.
And I'm James Hogan, and this is the April 2026 episode of Western Wednesday. Welcome to Western Wednesdays. I'm James Hogan, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Engagement. With me, Stacy Miller, Senior Director of Engagement here at WCU. Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic.
I like that shirt.
Look, one day for a Western.
Look at that.
Still celebrating.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that on the other side. But first today, we have a great episode with Frank and Becky Brown.
How exciting. What a delightful two people. Becky Brown is a Board of Trustee member, but such a long-standing Western story.
Class of 1967. And I just loved the fact that we got to go to their house in Cary.
Yeah.
We were out there back in February for the Hurricanes game we did, the WCU Alumni Night, which went really well. And they always are so kind to invite us over, and they hosted us for this episode. That's right. Frank Brown has a long history with this place, an ancestral history. His grandfather was Robert Hamilton, one of the Noble Nine who founded the university way back in 1889. It was really cool to hear some of those stories.
It is. It's really neat to hear that and get to, like you said, get to be in their home and see some of the photos and the different things that they have from many years at Western. So always love. I hate that we didn't record this episode in my favorite rocking chair, but we made it work.
This would have been a rocking chair episode for sure.
That's right.
You're going to hear about that story and so many more in this episode, and so we won't waste any time.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, Frank and Becky Brown, thank you so much for hosting us here at your house, and thanks for joining us for an episode of Western Wednesdays. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
So we want to get started right away, Frank, with your family's history at Western and in Cullowhee, starting with the fact that your great-grandfather, Robert Hamilton, was one of the founding members of what at the time was the Cullowhee idea. Start off right there and tell us a little bit about that part of your family history and how it connects to WCU.
Okay. Well, like you said, great-grandfather was one of the Noble Nine, as they call it. And then my grandfather, he was Robert Hamilton. Then we started a name sequence. My grandfather, Frank Hamilton Brown Sr., taught chemistry there for 40-plus years. My father, Frank Hamilton Brown Jr., was in administration. He started out teaching but got away from that, but he was in administration throughout his life and served as assistant to numerous presidents and chancellors, and on a couple of instances served as interim/acting president chancellor. So I guess go back to the start.
So all the way back to the beginning of the Cullowhee idea. And we were talking before we started recording, we found a list, a typewritten list of alumni of those very early classes, and your grandfather, Frank H. Brown, listed as a member of the class of 1898 from the Cullowhee School, one of 8 people in that graduating class. So a very different time.
Yes, very different, but, we just, I guess, from a personal standpoint, just proud of what they were able to do and kind of help lay a foundation that people have sure built on over the years to make the university what it is now.
So you grew up
yes, sir.
In Cullowhee.
Yep, and as small as community as it is, I was counting today, I think I lived by the time I was a senior in high school in 5 different places, because when I was born, we lived with grandmama and granddaddy in their house, which sat where H.F. Robinson is now. And then Mom and Dad built the original townhouse in I guess, late 48, early 49. So we lived there a while. Mama did all the cooking, and we lived upstairs. And then not sure of the number of years, but then we moved to Robertson Dorm, where she was a dorm mother. And then we lived in, I called it the old president's home. It was a home, a old house that sat near where the original Brown cafeteria was built, and then Buchanan Residence Hall. And then we lived there until Mom and Dad built a house up on where the Methodist Church Cemetery is, and that's where I spent my senior year in high school.
So you moved around a lot, just all within the same.
That's right.
500 yards.
Real on and off camp, real close to campus. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in real quick and talk, but since it's already we've already gotten there. And after looking at your new painting of the townhouse, so many alumni have memories and stories about the townhouse. I don't know that there's many events that we host where somebody's not telling us stories and memories of their time at Western, and it always includes the townhouse. So how was that as a kid growing up and all of these college students being there, and what was that like for you?
Well, I don't remember as much about that because I was a little kid then, but I do know that Mama did all the cooking. She made all the egg salads and all that stuff. It was well before the days of pre-made stuff, so she did that, and there was a lady that took care of my sister and myself, and the only thing I remember specifically one time is going down, and they had what I would call a jukebox where it'd play music.
Oh, yeah.
I remember going down there one time, but as far as, I guess I just don't remember that much about the students, but I do remember living there, and I have drawn a blank as to the actual number of years because must not have been long before we went up to Robertson, but it was a neat experience. Yeah. It was neat.
It was the center of town, as the center of gravity for that campus at that time. I've seen some photos of the old student union where they had a little, soda shop kind of counter in it. And other than that, I think it was the townhouse was the other spot. That was the other place. And you also mentioned Brown Cafeteria, now Brown Hall. And that was named in honor of your
granddaddy.
Grandfather.
Granddaddy from the one that's chemistry professor.
The chemistry professor. Class of 1898.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Becky, at some point, you showed up in Cullowhee, North Carolina.
You traveled a long way to get there.
I did. Well, I have been asked, why did I go to Western? And I lived in Whittier, 20 miles away. And it was a great place to grow up. And it's kind of like a Mayberry. Everybody knows everybody. And I went to, and I went to, but most of it was good. But so I went to Swain High, and I had friends that went to Western, so I thought, why not, And I did go, and it was, I like to tell this story, though. It was, I don't even know how many students were there in 1967, but I think we just got university status that year. Okay. And it was a big deal, which was great, but, it was okay for me, but that was okay. But I remember going in it just feeling like it was just too large. Because, growing up in Mayberry, where my parents worked in the post office, and so we knew everybody, and everybody knew us. And I just remember, and I don't know why I remember this, but I do remember going to the first day of class to Stillwell Building. And I don't know if it was art education, what it was, but I remember my teacher coming up to me, and I was in the back of I sat in the back of the class, so I'm thinking, what in the world, why is she coming here, And I remember she comes up to me and she says, "Becky, do you remember me?"
Oh, wow.
And I look up and no. And she says, "I'm Miss Leftwich, your first grade teacher."
Oh, my gosh.
I loved Miss Leftwich more than life, really, because, she was I just loved her. And she was my teacher, and she said in just such a nice way, "If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know." And that kind of set the tone for the rest of my career at Western.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that's a perfectly Western story, though. Immediately, someone makes a personal connection to you and says, "I'm glad you're here. We're going to do
and
this."
a teacher, too. I mean, you're a freshman. Your first class. You don't know anything. And then all of a sudden, it's like, it really was like a warm blanket came, I mean, it really was a comfortable thing. And I think a lot of the experiences I had at Western after that were similar. I mean, I think, and I think today, professors are helping students. I think you would kind of have that kind of story, not that exact story, but a lot of that story in other places.
Sure.
That's one thing that we always talk about. You and I have had that conversation before. Western has grown in number, right? But I feel like, what is so special about that place is no matter how much it's grown from years ago, it has maintained that small, tiny campus feel, right? Where everyone feels welcome. Everyone feels like they've got somebody. Everyone can turn to someone. There are resources there. It's just a community feel.
And I think one reason for that is where it's located.
Yeah.
You're kind of in a bubble, and you can either make it or break it, you really. But there are so many people there to help you along the way that, it's kind of hard to not really love the area and the school.
I think one thing that just jumped out at me right away, I didn't know that your parents ran the post office. So they were the center of gravity for Whittier. Your parents were at the townhouse working in the college administration, so you were in the middle of everything there. You both came from this environment where there were just people, everybody knew who you were. Everybody knew who you were, and like Marty Ramsey talks about, all the people who knew exactly who Marty was because they watched him grow up, and I wondered if you've ever thought about that in common with each other, the fact that you both came from these environments.
Well, I hadn't thought about it till you said that, but I guess. I guess we came from different, like 20 miles away in the mountains. I didn't know Frank or who Frank was or anything. And so I guess coming 20 miles away, he had to kind of, go into my family and my surroundings and vice versa.
Sure.
I had to go into his, but we were very fortunate in that way that the Browns and my parents, they really, socially, they didn't do a lot together, but when it came family time, the family came together. And even his aunts, and he and his sister are only children, but even the aunts and uncles, So I hadn't really thought about that, but I guess.
And I was thinking about something along this line earlier today. I was looking through our wedding pictures to try to find a photograph, but I guess it was the day of the wedding. There was a picture taken of our two fathers sitting on the couch in her house, and they've each got a sly grin on their face. And I'm thinking, okay, these guys, I wonder what they were talking about, because they grew up knowing a lot of the same people. They're just two good old mountain men. And I said, I wonder what the heck they were talking, because they each one of them had a kind of a sly grin on their face and sitting there on the couch looking at one another. And I was just, but we were very fortunate with our in-laws, and they didn't kick me out, and we didn't kick her out. So.
I can imagine that sly grin is something similar to what I see on your face, and Becky is doing her trustee thing, and we're off on the side watching her.
Sure.
That's kind of
Can you believe it?
So, Frank, you grew up there in Cullowhee on that campus, and then had a little rebellious streak and had to leave to go off to school. Whereas, Becky, you came right down the road to be a Catamount. How did your paths cross?
Well, we worked, I guess it was the summer before my junior year. I think. We worked at Unto These Hills selling tickets.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. At the drama.
Actually, we worked on the night shift. And we really I guess we kind of knew, because I had been at Western, and so I knew some people that he had gone to school with. So we just really started talking. And by the end of the summer, we were dating, and then he transferred to Carolina, and we dated for 2 years and then got married.
Wow.
So it was just, but again, I had no idea even then who his parents were. It was not like I didn't really have a clue.
But the funny thing was that I knew a lot of her family members because of, her uncles were heavily involved in the A&P stores. So Mom and Daddy shopped the A&P, but we knew her uncle. And then she had an aunt who worked in the bank there. So I knew of her family before we ever met. So that's kind of neat. But.
Becky, what did you study?
Well, when I went, I was going to do business education. And I decided after going into the classroom to observe that, and I actually did it at Camp Lab, it was probably not my thing to do. Because I really thought some of the things were quite funny myself. But so I ended up majoring in business administration. Mm-hmm. And that was not one of the things that females did back then.
Right.
I mean, I was really in most of my business classes, I was the only female. But I will have to say everybody was so nice. And, just everybody. I can't even think of anybody that wasn't. And even the professors, it wasn't like, some guys or some professors could say, well, why is she here? It wasn't anything like that. It was a really good experience. It was hard. But I made it through statistics. I just prayed to God I would make it through that.
Oh my gosh.
But so I graduated in 1971 with a BS in business administration. And then there weren't a lot of women in that, and Title IX came along, and I was very fortunate to get, into a field that I could progress in, and so it worked out.
Did you ever think of yourself as a trailblazer in that way?
Well, I didn't until several people have commented about that, but looking back on it, yes, I was, but it was not any grand plan that I did that. And I remember, because I worked a lot with the legislature, and I remember looking back on it at 20-something years old, appearing before your appropriations, defending a budget, and I'm thinking, why did I do that, But you just the opportunities come up, and you just do it. But my profession was very male dominated.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You left Cullowhee, and how did you get into your career? What jobs did you take along the way?
Well, actually, when we got married, we moved to Chapel Hill, and I worked in the math department in Chapel Hill for a year, just as a technical typist, but I enjoyed that quite a bit. And then we moved to Raleigh, and a mutual friend from Cullowhee actually knew someone, and they offered me a position as an assistant budget director in the Department of Commerce. And I was in that role for 2-3 years, and then I was offered the CFO of Department of Labor, and I was there for, well, I retired with 36 years service. So it was an interesting role. And Frank and I had similar jobs, and it was really funny because we would go into meetings, and a lot of times people didn't know that we were married. Because, I mean, you know, he would be in wearing his hat and me in my hat, but it all worked out.
Talk a little bit, you talked about the challenge of the business administration major. And then, you know, how that correlated to some of the challenges you face in the workforce. I love to hear when we do this and talk to people, hear the story about what you feel. What did you learn at Western? What did you experience at Western that prepared you for what was to come in that field?
Well, I really think that Western was always a resource for me.
Okay.
I had a couple of professors that I could, you know, bounce things off of. But I don't think anybody, including myself, would ever say I would never have thought that I would have ended up where I ended up. But I do remember coming back for a function, and one of the professors told me, I knew you could do it. Oh, wow. So I think really people were cheering me on from afar.
That's awesome.
But, you know, you have to be in any role, I don't care where it is, you have to just you have to have credibility, and you have to establish yourself and move from there.
That's right.
I don't mean to shift back to a family thing, but I just want to, this is something that I've always thought was so neat when we were talking about our family relationships. But after Daddy retired, he, for lack of a better term, was a lobbyist with the system, Dr. Friday, and he would go sit in on his committee meetings for the university. But then when Becky was defending her budget for her department, he would sneak in the back of the room and watch her do her thing. And if there was a bill that was coming down that she needed a copy of, he knew the ladies in the bill drafting office, so he would run and get copies of stuff for her. And that's, to me, is just kind of neat. And that's right up till the day he died. That's the relationship that we had.
Mr. Brown was just a super father-in-law too, but he would come in and he didn't want to I would not know it. I mean, it wouldn't be that I would know it. He would be in the back of the room, and when I would go up to stand up, you could see him back there. And he would just sit there and, you know, kind of down. He wouldn't even look at me, you know. He was just trying to, and then when I finished, he would sneak out. But if I needed a bill, he would help me in.
He would make sure. He'd send the gopher.
That's funny. He took that Cullowhee personality all the way, right? That culture.
Well, talking about that Cullowhee personality, he really did well in lobbying for the university but he would bring apples from Barber's Orchard down there, and many times I would be at state budget talking to different people, and they would say, "Oh, Mr. Brown brought me the best apples." Well, you know, those apples really pay dividends for the university.
They sure do. And I'm sure at that time, too, Cullowhee must have seemed even further away from Raleigh than it does now.
Had to work a lot harder. Yeah.
You did. You didn't have I-40 going 65, 70 miles an hour to get there. I mean, it's far away. There's no doubt about it, but it must have seemed further away. I just want to also mention, those were some really important years in our state history as well. You had mentioned arriving in 1967. We did a podcast with Steve White, who jokingly refers to himself as the last graduate of Western Carolina College because we gained university status after that. But the 1970s were a period of great expansion in North Carolina for the UNC system, but also across the state government. And certainly into the 80s and 90s, there was so much growth in the state, and there were so many things that happened through those courses. What was it like to be in the middle of it, both as a budget director, a CFO at Labor, but also just in Raleigh, in the state government, in the machine, so to speak?
It was very interesting. And I remember working with state budget, and I told the budget officer, actually, I said, you have to learn how to play the game. But I know how to play the game. You got to figure this stuff out. But it was really interesting to see how the budget worked. The General Assembly, the fiscal analysts, and how everything worked. And I call it a game. And it's a game that, has a lot of high stakes, but it can be pretty exciting too.
Yeah.
And to be in the middle of that and to see, Labor was just small potatoes to so many others, but to be in the middle of that and seeing how that worked. And, you could go into a committee meeting and all of a sudden somebody would decide to take money from your department.
Right.
And so then you would have to go back and fight for that money and stand up and say, I need that money because.
As a smaller department especially, it must have been,
well,
you had to be on
Council
guard.
of State, because we were not under the governor, we were Council of State.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an elected commissioner of labor.
I can imagine that relationships were vital.
Relationships were very, very vital. I had wonderful, I had bosses from both parties, but I had wonderful commissioners who supported me, which is, you have to have the support. But a lot of times they don't know the ins and outs, like, someone who's been in the trenches. And so, they would say, Becky, what do you think? Or, what should we do? And 9 times out of 10, they would defer, not because I was great, but just because I was in the system. Yeah. And you have to be in that system.
You knew what you were talking about.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I'm going to fast forward us a little bit. You have remained involved with Western, both of you, for a very long time. Becky, you sit on the university's board of trustees. Talk about, they called and asked you to do that, right? And what was it? Why did you say yes to that? I'm sure sometimes you might question why you said yes to that, although we're so glad that you did. But what was it that pulled you to take on that assignment and do that for your university?
Well, I would have to say when the chancellor called me and asked me to do this, I really said, why me? Why me? But then, Frank and I talked about it, and I said, well, why not me? And I will have to say that I have thoroughly enjoyed being on the board of trustees. And I would have to say that I was involved in, before the trustee, I've been driving back and forth to Cullowhee for many years. And I think you can become a part of that university from afar. I think there's a misconception that if you live out of that town, you can't be involved. And there are so many good people that have done so many wonderful things for Western that don't live in Cullowhee or that area. So it was I was shocked to be asked, to be very frank with you, but I was, why not me? And I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
And we have enjoyed having you, that's for sure.
And
you joined the board when?
I joined the board in
2020, wasn't
it was during COVID.
Okay.
Okay.
It was May. You were approved in May of 2020, I think.
So that's with Chancellor Brown,
Chancellor Brown.
who was at that point finishing her first year.
First year.
Yeah, and so you've gotten the opportunity to kind of walk alongside Chancellor Brown in her term as our leader. What has that experience been like also watching our university's first female chancellor at the helm?
It has been terrific. I think she has brought a lot of energy, common sense, just the ability to move things forward in a very, very good way, in a timely way. I think it is interesting that look at the athletics. She is the one that is really supporting that to the hilt. And, she walks the walk. She doesn't talk the talk. She walks the walk. And I think that she's really been a real asset. I mean, Dr. Belcher was dynamic. There's no doubt about it. And coming in after, sometimes that's more difficult, but she has really, I think, she's her own person and has put her own spin on the university. And I have really enjoyed working with her.
I say that it was Allison Morrison Shuttler served as interim chancellor, acting chancellor, and I guess was technically our first female interim chancellor, and Dr. Brown, Chancellor Brown, as the first. But in that role, you, just to reference something you had just mentioned about working with the legislature, in this sense, you're the commissioner and she's the closest to the game.
Yeah.
Have you really had to kind of think about that framework as the career that you spent in Raleigh working with legislators, working with government officials, and how you approach this work as a trustee?
Well, again, I think credibility is everything.
Yeah.
And so, I don't really think approaching the chancellors any different than me approaching someone, else in the legislature or any, in top official, because there's a lot of statewide elected officials, and I work for one. So I think you just have to, if you're asked, you need to put you need to say what you think and move forward. And she appreciates that, I think, and welcomes comments.
Yeah. I think, I've seen such a growth. I mean, to start off, as you guys already said, under COVID and have to climb out of that and see some of the things that she's done in such a creative way. It's not been so cookie cutter, right? She's had to be very creative to do some of the things. And she's got a great board of trustees there, foundation board. All of our boards, I think right now are really strong in helping move us forward. But I know she would say the same about the board of trustees, I think, that you're saying in the reverse.
Well, and then too, she has good people behind her, the executive council. And I mean, that is kudos to her. Right. She there's a lot of experience there that, she probably realized she needed some of that experience. And so that's, you don't really go in and just change things. And I think she's just following along in her own way, but taking advice from her executive council when she wants it.
Yeah. When you look, Becky, at the ways that you are able through being a trustee, but also through being an alumni leader, right? And especially being married to someone with such deep Cullowhee roots as well. When you look at that and look at all that you give back to your university, what are some of the things that make you most proud?
I don't know. I really don't know. I would say, I think to sum it up, I went to school with Phil Walker, and Phil Walker has done so much for the Western Carolina University. And Phil has he's still doing. I mean, he's just there. But I remember sitting in the student union a few years back, I think waiting for Frank, and he came in. And he sat down and he said to me, we were talking about different things at Western. And he says, we've come a long way, haven't we, Becky?
Wow.
And I think that's really to sum it up. I don't really think me being on the board of trustees or the foundation board or the alumni board or Catamount Club or all that stuff, it really is not one thing. Yeah. It's just a culmination of things. And I think giving back in any regard, it just makes a difference.
One of the ways that you give back to Western, not just as a trustee, but or an alumna of the institution, is to host in this house. Every summer we do a new student send-off for students in the Wake County area, but we've had people drive from Wilmington.
We have.
We've had people drive a long way to come to Frank and Becky's
this house out.
And I know, and every year I feel like it's getting a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And at some point we're going to rent a tent out there, just keep going. But you welcome people into your home. And I think back to that experience where you find your first grade teacher. Well, you may not know these students who are coming in because you didn't teach them in first grade, but you still give them an extraordinary first touch as they enter as catamounts. What prompted you to want to do that and to make the decision to do it here and do it the way you do it?
Well, I think Wallace and Jeanette Hyde hosted this summer send-off for a few years, and then they could no longer do it. And I just think we just said we'll do it, and we'll do it here. And so many people have come to me when they've left and said, it's so nice to have it in your home. Mm-hmm. I think that gives it the personal touch. And so we've been having summer send-offs at our house, I know, since before 2007. And
you've had alumni of your send-offs.
That's right.
Come back to the send-offs.
Actually, we have. But it is really a special time for Frank and I to just get to meet the students, get to meet the parents. Sometimes when we're on campus, they'll see us. And that just makes my day to just see them. I have had parents call me. Because we extend that too. If we can do anything, and help, like somebody we connected about getting a ride home and stuff. It's just like having that personal touch so that they know they have somebody to call or somebody that really cares about what they're doing. And so it really brings us a lot of pleasure to have, people here.
It's fun to watch you two when they're here. Frank, you're all the time. You're running back and forth.
Trying to make sure it's right.
That's right. They're not running out of food.
I don't want to upset Stacy. Don't want to upset Stacy. That's who these two right here.
Quite
cracking
the
the whip. Oh my gosh. But we were talking about this. We stopped on the way here for lunch, and Sam was talking about this. Sam was with you all, got to see you in Ireland a couple of years back when the Pride of the Mountains marching band marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Dublin. And you ran into a group of students that was with Sam. Yes. Sam shepherding all these, trombone players. Sam, I don't know who you had. Through the airport in Ireland, and you find each other. And Sam says, boy, she lit up. She wanted pictures with them. And watching you with those students, I think that's the most energized I get to see you is with our students.
Right. Well, I really do love students. The student body presidents I love. And
we talk about that too.
I do light up. We had a great time in Ireland. We actually went when the band played in the Rose Parade a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that was just really fun. And that was, we got to, kind of talk to the kids and the parents. And, we've kind of run into a few of those along the way. So it's just really fun to be with the students. I just love them to death.
Frank and Becky, if you could get into a time machine, I usually ask this question and go back and find yourself when you were 18 years old, brand new on campus, walking around. And you can take that if you want, but if you could get in that time machine and go 50 years into the future and find Cullowhee, North Carolina, what do you wish and hope and dream that it looks like in 50 more years as we approach the 200-year anniversary of Western Carolina?
I hope we have a championship football team like Alabama, and we have won the national championship,
and beaten Carolina to do it.
Beat anybody to do it. And I hope that we have lots of not only engineers, but I really think that we need to, we have the engineering program, the nursing program, the teaching, just keep expanding so that the western part of the state can benefit from everything that's being pumped in up there. And a national championship would not be bad.
I think from my perspective, of course, growing up there, I hope, and I think they are doing it, but I hope they will take more advantage of all the technology. And the university was founded to serve the region, so I hope they continue to utilize resources, whatever, to serve that part of the state, but then they will branch out and serve other areas. But 50 years down the road, I hope some of the scenery and stuff is still there. Mm-hmm. And it's still the place it has been and is now, and you don't lose that. I don't know how to describe the area, but you don't lose that. But you're still doing what you can to serve, that area of the state and the world like we're doing now. So
it's the prettiest valley in the world.
It is. When you talk about not losing the scenery, immediately what just went through my head was, I think it was yesterday, the university put out an Instagram post about, this is what I mean when I say I go to school in Western North Carolina.
Oh, and the waterfalls.
I have looked at it several times, right? I mean, I'm from Eastern North Carolina. It doesn't look quite the same, right? But I've been there 15 and a half years, and it's crazy. Sam and I talk about this because I get on Sam's nerves in the fall because I'm a leaf looker. Right, and I'm soaking it all in.
Okay.
So but hearing you talk about the scenery,
leaf lookers are good.
That's right.
Just keep going.
Still there.
Keep going.
That's what it makes me think of. Is this is what I mean when I say I go to school in Western North Carolina? And so that's immediately what just came to my head is hearing you.
Well, we haven't talked about it, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but down in your basement is that window frame with photos in it that hung in that farmhouse where H.F. Robinson is now. And what I think is so fun is to know that when you looked out that window, it was the same mountains, and the same mountains will be there in 50 years.
Yeah, because the view was up the valley where the football stadium and all that. That's the look that you got, and a lot of that is still there.
So
that
cool.
is something
That's
else.
Good.
Frank, Becky, thank you so much for your service to Western, for all you do for our students, whether they're brand new or whether they're there and you're helping them as a trustee. Thanks for your service to our state. You both make us so proud, and we're so grateful that you're part of our big Catamount family.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love Frank and Becky.
Oh, they are so wonderful.
They met at Unto These Hills.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is so sweet. So many stories. Obviously, we heard about the farmhouse, the kitchen window.
And the townhouse.
Oh, and the townhouse. Oh, my gosh, yes.
And
I
the
didn't even,
townhouse.
like, I feel like I'd heard a lot of the stories that they talked about, but there were still so many stories that I just didn't know.
Yeah.
The work that they did, the work that Becky did in Raleigh, as a lobbyist, or working for the assistant budget director rather, and just such a sweet family and great leaders.
Yeah,
for
and
WCU.
and the work that they continue to do for this university.
Yeah.
Becky being on the board of trustees talked about that, and hosting the new student send-off and welcoming those families every single summer.
Summer.
Yeah, continuing to do that work and just be a part of the growth and advancement of Western. It's
We
awesome.
don't really talk about it, but when we have those new students in their house, they're connecting with somebody who's literally related to the founder of the university. It's
pretty cool.
Tell me, guys, what other university gives you that opportunity? Like, they're not doing that at Appalachian State. Get out of here.
We can make that joke for days.
Get out
What
of
else
here.
have we been doing in Cullowhee,
Well,
James?
Stacy, it's been a great one day for Western.
That's right, hair flip.
Oh my gosh, it was so cool. We're still catching up on like lost sleep over this because it takes a ton of work, and we were up till midnight watching it and letting it go. Over 1,500 gifts, Stacy.
Yes, Catamount Nation showed up so big. I'm so proud.
We are so proud. Truly, thank you. Please hear it from us. Thank you. It was such an amazing turnout. I mean, I am so proud. So many people came out, gave to so many different things.
Yes.
And we got to hear from people we hadn't heard from in a long time.
That's right.
It was very, very exciting.
That's right. Yay for the phone-a-thon. We will be back next year.
We had Kerwin Bell out there making phone calls.
Yes.
Heidi Buchanan, from Hunter Library, was calling everybody to join Friends of the Library. I think the entire volleyball team was there.
Yeah, it was great. Cheer squad.
Yes.
They brought all the energy. It was fun. It was great.
The
That's right.
handspring right down the middle of the call.
Yeah.
That was wild.
Yeah.
Oneday.wcu.edu. If you're curious about how everything ended up, go check it out and go celebrate with us all the wonderful gifts that you guys helped to provide.
That's right. And now we've turned the page and we're moving on to lots of alumni engagement events.
No rest for the weary.
No rest. That's right. We've got the Kappa Alpha Psi coming back for their 45th reunion in just a few weeks.
What a great group of people.
That's right.
April 10th through the 12th for KA Psi, and 45 years.
Yeah, we're excited to spend a weekend with those guys. What great stewards of Western and all things Catamount. So we're really looking forward to spending some time and celebrating them. And then we've got the men's and women's soccer.
Right after that.
The old timers all coming back in KKSB.
There is nothing cooler than watching our soccer alumni out on the pitch with the team, with our current team. And if you really want a good time, come out, just kind of sneak out to the soccer field and watch these guys who were playing soccer in the 1970s.
Still going at it.
And having a lot of fun. And our EMC program reunion along the way. Just
their 50th.
50 years of emergency medical care. That's a great, cool story as well.
Yeah.
So looking forward to having them back.
We'll round out April with African American Alumni Society reunion in Charlotte this year. So that's a little bit of a change. If you're still hanging in with us to catch up on the events, updates, and what's going on, that reunion is going to be in Charlotte this year. So really excited about that, and looking forward to seeing some feedback and some footage from that.
And then not much longer after that,
Ballparks and Brews.
it's time to go watch some baseball.
Can't wait.
I know.
It's baseball
It's one
season,
of our favorite
y'all.
things to do, isn't it? Oh my gosh. We've got the Greensboro Grasshoppers, the Cannonballers, the Tourists, back to the Crawdads.
The Atlanta Braves.
And the Atlanta Braves.
That's
I didn't
right.
know if you were going to mention it.
Oh, I can't wait. May 16th.
Secret is out of the bag.
Be there, don't be square. I can't wait.
It's so please get your ticket now because we do have a limited number.
Yeah, we do. We only have 75 tickets for the Braves. So tickets will be limited at most of the ballparks. Some of them we can get extras, but we sold out of everything last year. So make sure you don't miss that. We're looking forward. The warm weather is here in Cullowhee. I've even got my flip-flops on today to encourage it to just keep on coming.
You're willing it into existence.
Right. Get that winter weather out of here. I've got a new summer tumbler from Southern Hill Farms, all the things summer. So don't miss a chance to be with us and have an alumni night with you name it, whatever is closest to you. So we can't wait.
It's going to be a great time. Please, please, please go to alumni.wcu.edu/events. You can find all of those events. You can register for them. You can sign up your buddies. Give your fraternity brothers a call. Give your friends from Scott or Walker a call and say, let's get together. Let's go see a baseball game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to everybody for joining us for another episode.
Absolutely. Thanks to Frank and Becky again for having us over to the house and Carrie and for a great episode. Thanks to Sam Wallace, our intrepid producer. Be sure to like and subscribe. Mash that subscribe button. I think you can mash it. I think you mash that button. Mash that button.
Click it.
You can click it and keep up with us. Send this out as well. Share it all around. Until next time, guys, as always,
Go Cats.